that picture of Judy and me, we are at the Focus on the Family Marriage Center in Cave Creek. How many have been to it? Okay. How many have driven by it? Anybody? Okay, we'll start there. I would love if you as a married couple would consider joining them for a weekend seminar. I already had 2 couples come up to me after first hour and said that they're interested in going. We've been married forever. We went with open hands and open heart, and it made an incredible difference in our lives. I would have loved to have had this decades ago. And so if you're married, this is not if your marriage is in trouble. If you're on the rocks, they have a week-long session that would be more fitting for what you guys might be going through. This is more of, we just need to think and need to get some perspective, and our marriage needs to be stronger. That is a great way to do that. I'd love for people to stand right where we're standing, and you'll know, when you go, you'll know where that is very quickly, and send us a picture like that. I would love to get more and more couples here at the chapel to make their way to this amazing opportunity. So I wasn't going to say that, but they threw the picture up there, and I thought we could take a minute and push that because it would be to your advantage for sure. Everybody knows in-law relationships can be complicated. And they're all different. Sometimes they're a gift, sometimes they're a challenge, sometimes they're both in the same afternoon. A mother-in-law may wonder, am I needed? A daughter-in-law may wonder, am I accepted? A son may feel stuck in the middle. A family meal can carry more tension than anyone wants to admit. But the book of Ruth does not begin with a funny in-law joke, although there are lots to choose from. Naomi is just a difficult mother-in-law, actually not a difficult mother-in-law, amazing mother-in-law in a very difficult situation. She is a heartbroken woman. And Ruth is not just a loyal daughter-in-law, she is a grieving woman with an uncertain future. And in this messy, painful, complicated relationship, God begins to write one of the most beautiful stories of redemption in all of the Bible. I am amazed by the number of emails, text messages, and comments I've received regarding this very topic, whether I'm preaching or someone else in this messy relationship series. And what it dawned on me this past week more than ever is that we all have messy relationships. I was under the impression that it was a much smaller percentage. Ridiculous, I know. And so every topic or every episode, so to speak, of this series has offered us a different perspective in a messy relationship. And this first one this one for this week 7 or 8, is when loss makes family messy. The problem with preaching Ruth in a 25-minute sermon is that there's an awful lot that we are leaving on the editor's floor. And if you don't know the story, some of you do, some of you are brand new to it, it's going to be really difficult for me to help bring us all up to speed in the time permitted. And so bear with me, we'll do the best we can. But my last and final point, which I'm trying to save as much time for, which I did a horrible job first hour, is the one that has made the biggest difference in my life. I hope it does for you. And the first thing I want to talk about, the first point I want to make is this. Grief can add unbearable weight to any relationship. Actually, I thought about changing this point to grief will add unbearable weight to all relationships. It just does. And to assume that grief does not come and hit you or affect you because of your spiritual background, how long you've walked with God and how long you've trusted him and your spiritual background and your church background, assuming that you're your foundation is so secure and so God's faithfulness has been demonstrated in your life for maybe decades, assuming even that those things took place, that you can come to a place where grief hits you and you can somehow hit it like a boat would hit just a medium-sized wave and we can move on. It's ridiculous. I've done a lot of weddings. I enjoy weddings. I enjoy the festivities, and I enjoy lots of things. We're doing a wedding in San Diego next weekend, actually, and looking forward to time with friends and all of the things that come with a great wedding. And one of the things that I'll say, and I say it in every wedding I've ever done, is the couple are standing there holding all four hands. I say this: Today you have a partner in life that will be with you when fear and grief rack your mind. What I don't say is that there are moments when even the best and most faithful and committed and empathetic and sympathetic spouse is walking in those difficult times with you. There are moments when he or she isn't enough. And for the majority, let's say at least 51% of the times, having a spouse who loves you and is committed to you, while your mind and heart face grief and your mind is wrecked, is enough. But what happens when it's not? That's what this sermon's about. Some of you are single. And so even if you were in a relationship, I will tell you that there's no guarantee that everything, that all the events in your life that bring fear, when fear and grief wreck your mind, it's sometimes, and maybe often, not enough. There has to be more. I have recently thought about what it would be like to not have a faithful God walk with me when fear and grief rack my mind. And I think about the loss of hope and confidence for the future. And in our feeble human minds, we do all that we can to try to write the script for the future, knowing very well that it's just a vain exercise that never works out the way we plan or think or hope or want. Grief can add unbearable weight to any relationship. Let me start reading by Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. Maybe a little bit longer than I normally do, but we want to make sure we get a full foundation for this sermon. Number one, of fear and grief can add unbearable weight to any relationship. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech. I've practiced all week. I even practiced between services. The pressure of you people looking at me is too much. Elimelech. And the name of his wife was Naomi. And the names of the sons was Mahlon and Chilion. And they were, you guys are killing me, Ephraimites in Bethlehem and Judah. And they went into the country of Moab and they remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, he died. And she was left with her 2 sons. And these took Moabite wives. And the name of the one was Orpah. And the name of the other was Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion died, so the woman was left without her 2 sons and husband. Here's the summary. Naomi loses her husband. Years later, she loses her 2 sons. And now you have a situation where Naomi, with 2 young women, no men in their life. And the family's not dealing with a minor disagreement. They're dealing with deep grief, wondering what tomorrow holds. Actually, probably wondering what today holds. Naomi's a mess. She's sad, she's confused, she's empty, she's lonely, she's bitter. In fact, she's so bitter, some of you already know this, that she has renamed herself Mara, which means bitterness. Naomi was a mess. And pain and chaos often causes unexpected consequences. When pain enters your life, and by the way, there are moments that we can look back at, that it was that moment that we got the text. It's the moment that we got the phone call. It's the moment that you overheard someone talking. We've all watched documentaries about that moment when life changes at that instant forever for a family. That something happens and everyone in the scenario, everyone in the family, everyone in that situation knows life will never be the same again. What happens? I think several things happen. I just name a couple here. Pain in crisis changes how we see others. On verse 20, it says, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara. The Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." So her pain quite literally becomes her identity. The name Naomi means pleasant. The name Mara means bitter. And she no longer is just a woman who's experienced bitterness. She now sees herself as bitterness. And that's what grief can do. It just doesn't hurt the heart. Pain can rename a soul. I have never experienced this depth of pain. I am the least qualified to speak this point. Some of you, we could usher up to this podium. You could tell your stories. And this is what I know. Of the few things in my life that just barely make the radar compared to the things that you have dealt with or dealing with today, I know this, that if you're not careful, your pain will change how you see your very identity will become your crisis. And when our identity becomes our crisis, it is like a ship in the ocean with no rudder, no sail, and you are at the mercy of the crisis storm. Your foundation is gone. And so the pain causes you to change how you actually view no matter what happens after that point, the evil one's won. The second thing is that pain changes how we see others. Grief can make us push away people. Disappointment can make us assume the worst in people. Bitterness can make us believe the story is already over. Let me repeat that. Bitterness can make us believe that the story is already the pain won. And so not only does our identity change, but we raise the flag of surrender. And as that white flag of surrender moves to the top, we're like, we're done. I'm done. So not only does it change the way we view ourselves, it changes the way we see others. Disappointment makes us assume the worst in others. 3, pain changes how we relate to others. Naomi tells Ruth and Orpah to go back home. On one level, she's trying to help them. I don't sense in this story a passive aggressiveness. I don't sense a wallowing in self-pity. It may be there, and there's other indications of maybe there's a little of that, but in this situation, in this decision, she's just trying to help these 2 young women who have a life ahead of them. Go. Don't attach yourself to me. I'm the last person you want to attach yourself to. I've done nothing but bring misery to you. Go. On one level, she may be trying to help, but on another level, Naomi is so empty that she can't imagine God still working. Are you in a place where you can't even fathom God working? Are you up against a rock? Are you up against a mountain? And in your mind, going through, around, over, under, doesn't even seem, even an ounce of possibility, not to mention probability. This story is for you. This story is for you because in this most desperate situation, we will see at the end God doing something in such a miraculous way that no one could have predicted it. The last is pain changes how we view God. So if it changes the way we view ourselves and the way we choose how we view God, it is really game over. And no matter what we know, no matter who we are, no matter our depth in relationship with Jesus today, no matter his past faithfulness in our lives, no matter what our minds are trying to say, we begin saying the words of the psalmist in Psalm 13. It says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day?" Suffering can make us suspicious of God's love and skeptical of his strength. Pain and suffering can make us suspicious of God's love and skeptical of God's strength. Let me bring some personal application. We'll keep that up there, Drex, for a couple minutes. For you, Christian, actually, I would say to you, Christian, who is holding on by a string, don't let pain convince you that God is absent. Pain has a way of unraveling years of cultivated faith. A season of loss can make you question things that you once so believed deeply. But your pain does not get your final word. Your circumstances do not get the final word. Your emotions do not get your final word. God may feel hidden, but he is not absent. Let me speak to those of you that are exploring a living God. You've gone down a lot of roads over the years and you have wondered where God is. I will say this. Until today, you may have been confusing your relationship with church with your relationship with God. I've been in a lot of good churches over the last 40 years, and I would trust none of those with my life. I wouldn't, but I would trust Jesus with my life to the very end. Naomi's pain is not cleaned up, nor is it ignored. But God meets people in their grief, in their real disappointment, in their real family brokenness. Let me speak to you who are exploring Jesus today. There'll be moments in your life where your mind is wrecked, your heart is pounding, your blood pressure is raised. You may not feel any hope for today, not to mention tomorrow. But for those of us that know Jesus, the idea of trusting him at the most difficult moment of our lives is an opportunity for us to see him work in ways that we can't fathom. Grief can add unbearable weight to any relationship. 2, faithfulness keeps standing when feelings collapse. Real love is proven when leaving is an option. Faithful love refuses to let go. Just because of time, I can't tell this whole story, but I will tell you that Naomi hears that the famine in Bethlehem is over, and they decide to return back to Moab. And her 2 daughters-in-law will join her in the journey, but Naomi urges them to go back. We've already talked about that. She explains she has nothing to offer them, and even in her pain, she tries to protect these girls. And Ruth gives one of the most special, beautiful statements of loyalty in all of the scriptures from the beginning to the end, where she says in Ruth 1:16, "Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God." And Ruth does not just choose what is easy. She doesn't choose what would be most convenient. She doesn't choose what is most comfortable. Ruth's love is not based on convenience. It's a covenant love. It's a loyal love. It's a love that says, I'll stay even in the lack of pleasantness. And I would say to us Christians, we're called to love in spite of our feelings. And messy relationships often look like patience and presence and humility and commitment. But it does not mean that we should ask, am I leaving God because he is leading me or because this relationship is difficult? Sometimes the most Christ-like thing we can offer is being steady and humble and loyal. Grief can add unbearable weight. Faithfulness keeps standing when feelings collapse. And lastly, God's big story moves through the smallest steps. Just because of time, let me just run through Ruth chapter 2 here. They are poor, they are vulnerable. Ruth takes initiative and goes out to glean grain in the field so they can have food. She happens to come to the field of Boaz, a respected man in Elimelech's family line, actually. Boaz notices Ruth, protects her, provides for her, and praises her loyalty to Naomi. And so God begins providing through Ruth's most humble work and Boaz's generous kindness. We continue in chapter 3 where Ruth asks Boaz to redeem. Naomi sees Boaz and may be able to provide long-term hope. And Boaz redeems Ruth and Naomi's family. And this is the point that just was driven home to me this week. That out of desperation, Ruth, with a great work ethic, just did what she had to do. In fact, she did what she could only do. She just went to a field and picked up extra pieces to live on. And suddenly we start seeing this movement in their situation. And God does extraordinary things through ordinary faithfulness through your ordinary life, including yours. It's extraordinary things through ordinary faithfulness in ordinary lives. And Ruth goes to work in a field, and Boaz shows kindness, and Naomi begins to feel hope again, and a family line is then restored. And this is what I know in my life. That I know that putting my left foot in front of my right and just moving at times when you think, why? Of getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth and combing your hair and just going to work. And just doing what you're supposed to do that day can be the most faithful and planting the seeds for the biggest and greatest miracles that God can perform. And sometimes I get this idea, maybe you're with me, that I'm waiting for God to part the sea. I'm waiting for God to do something so incredible. And I think about this very building that you sit in right now. That the likelihood of all of a sudden a billionaire showing up and buying this building and handing it to us is very unlikely. Can it happen? Sure. But more likely is just us as a church remaining faithful every day, every hour, and every decision. And I don't know what's in your life that you face. I don't know the obstacle that you face. Can God perform miracles? Has he? Absolutely. But my understanding of watching him work in the past has been way more. 99% of the time, it's God does extraordinary things through ordinary faithfulness of ordinary people. And so as we sit around and wait for God to perform miracles, we miss an opportunity to do the right thing at the right time as ordinary people. God is quietly working through everyday obedience. God uses ordinary choices to do something much bigger than they can see. You'll never be rewarded for ordinary obedience at that moment, but Jesus is noticing it. And it may not feel right, but it's doing the right thing. It may not, you may be not doing it for any other reason except it's just the right thing to do. Jesus is noticing. Do not underestimate small acts of faithfulness and obedience in messy relationships. It's that kind word. It's that humble apology. It's that wise boundary. It's that simple prayer. It's that sending that one meal, lending an ear, being extra patient. The book of Ruth shows us that God is not only interested in religious moments and miraculous moments, but he's at work in family, pain, work, provision, grief, loyalty, and second chances. Let me close with this. The book of Ruth begins with death and grief and uncertainty, and begins with a mother-in-law who feels empty and a daughter-in-law who has every reason to walk away, but Ruth stays, Naomi survives, Boaz redeems, and God writes a bigger picture. And messy relationships don't stop with the redemptive work of God. Sometimes they become the very place where we see it most clearly. And I would invite you to ask yourself this question. What is the one thing that's in my life as the greatest obstacle to what I am looking for and believe is necessary for peace and security and safety in my life? And could it be through simple acts of daily living and obedience, of saying the words, Jesus, I trust you. I don't know where you're going. I don't know what you're doing. And I don't even see you or feel you. And that's okay because I know you are there. Because you are on the verge. You are on the verge of seeing him work in ways that you can't even fathom. Not out of 30 days fasting and praying. That's something you want to do. Go for it. I'm telling you, God works in ordinary obedience in the lives of ordinary believers in miraculous, superordinary ways. Jesus, thank you for your faithfulness in my life, in our lives, this church's life. Thank you for your goodness and faithfulness and mercy and peace. May we never underestimate the beauty and the power of doing the right thing at the right time and watching you do you while we do us. We do what we've been called to do. In Jesus' name, amen.